Thanks for tuning in to The World We Want, the NAAEE podcast, a project of the North American Association for Environmental Education. If these episodes resonate with you, after the podcast, check out our website, which contains opportunities for professional development, resources for educators and administrators, and guidance on how you can incorporate environmental education into a broader teaching strategy. Visit us at NAAEE.org/podcast. And thanks for listening.
Welcome to The World We Want, the NAAEE podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Jerry Ellis. What happens when we slow down long enough to truly notice? Focus our minds together with our senses on the living world around us.
Because fundamentally, we're paying attention. Fundamentally, we are falling in love with the world. So teaching people how to nature journal is teaching people how to fall in love with their life, with their world. That's what motivates us to protect it.
For many of us, nature is something we move through quickly. We see it in passing, a bird overhead, the shape of a tree, the fleeting figure of something mysterious in the bushes around us. But rarely do we stop long enough to immerse ourselves. My guest today is John Muir Laws, or simply Jack to many. He has spent decades helping people learn how to see the natural world more deeply. Jack is a naturalist, environmental educator, scientist, and internationally recognized nature journaler. But more than a daily diary, journaling is an approach to connecting to nature that combines art, observation, curiosity, and environmental education. Through his books, workshops, teacher trainings, and lifelong advocacy for nature journaling as a tool for learning, he has helped shape a growing movement that reconnects people to careful observation, scientific inquiry, and in turn, the living world. For educators, students, scientists, and artists alike, Jack's work offers something increasingly rare: an invitation to slow down, pay attention, ask questions, and rediscover learning through direct experience. But at the heart of Jack's work is something much deeper than just art. It's the idea that careful observation changes our relationship with nature. That when we truly notice something, we begin to care about it differently. This conversation is about what lies at the heart of journaling: curiosity, learning to explore with all our senses, and how the simple act of slowing down and observing can reconnect us to nature all around us. Today, we discover the art of journaling in conversation with John Muir Laws. Hi, Jack, and welcome to The World We Want. I am really delighted to have you on and have this conversation. So, welcome.
I've been looking forward to talking with you again. This is going to be fun.
I wanted to kick off our conversation today with reading you a couple of things. First, if you allow me, I'd like to read, it's something from Amy Tan's book, The Backyard Bird Chronicles. It's something she wrote about you. She was taking one of your workshops. She wrote, "Classes were not strictly about drawing. If anything, they had just as much to do with being curious, allowing us to return to childhood wonderment when everything was seen as new. That was the focus of beginning our drawings, to wonder in depth, to notice, to question." Among the many things I learned from Jack, and probably the most important to me, is as you look at the bird, try to feel what life within it is like. And for me, that meant be the bird. I love the idea of be the bird. And then that kind of connects directly to something you wrote in one of your own books. And this is from Law's Guide to Nature Drawing and Journaling. You were writing about from love to action. And you said, when I was working on the Laws Field Guide to the Sierra Nevadas, I painted nearly 3,000 watercolors of plants and animals I encountered. By the time I was done drawing a plant, I felt like I had forged a relationship with it. It felt wrong to just pick a plant, draw it, and leave it wilting beside the trail. Instead, I would sit beside it, draw it to scale, add my watercolors, then stand up and fluff up the grass where I was sitting. Towards the end of the 6 years of the work, I found myself talking to the plants that I painted and thanking them for the place that I found them on and then moving on. I was falling in love again with each species I encountered. The reason I think those two things connect is, and And to me, it feels like it's at the core of your work and what you do is putting ourselves in the place of that other thing.
And that really is the goal of being alive. That's what most of what Mary Oliver's poems are about, is can you give yourself the blessing of that space to be present with something else to the degree that you're changed and you're moved. I think it's so easy to be just sort of labeling things and moving on, because that's efficient and that allows us to do more. But that's not always better, because we think, all right, now I'm sitting in my my room here and I'm looking out and I can see California poppies growing up in the yard, and I have sketched and drawn California poppies. I have no idea how many times, but my goal is, whenever I sit down with one of those poppies again, is can I look with tender enough eyes to notice something about this that I've never noticed before? Rachel Carson has this quote, and I'm going to not do it justice, but she says to imagine that this is the first time that you're seeing it. How carefully would you look if you knew that it were the last? Right? So there's an urgency there to be present with the world. But our busy human brain kind of has us bouncing along, and it's efficient to go California poppy, Schultzia California. I know this. Great. Okay, what else is going on? I've got it. I've checked it off in my brain. That's a really different thing than slowing myself down to the speed that I can let in something new and to really, really be present with it.
We both love bird watching, and there's a big difference. When I'm getting people out for the first time, there's a big difference in watching birds and bird watching.
Oh, I've never heard somebody say that. May I steal that idea?
You are welcome to it.
There's a difference between watching birds and bird watching. Okay, so keep going. I think I know where we're going. This is fun.
To steal from your writings and from Amy's writings, it's becoming that thing. It's not just ticking it off, but watching it in flight, watching the beauty of that moment, the essence of what that thing is. And there's a phrase that birders use that has other connotations, but I'll use it anyway, where I'm amongst friends here. And it's called a bird's jizz. It's that indescribable thing that the bird does that makes it that unique species, that unique bird, and in some cases, that unique individual. And if you look long enough, you've moved from a bird to a species, to a type of species, to that individual. And what you begin to see is that, yes, every chickadee is an individual. They may all look alike, but if you sit long enough, they all have their own personalities. And that's what I mean about, watching. Not bird watching, but watching birds.
Right. And there's so much that we can learn just by sitting on a stump and paying attention, that you think you know this species because you can identify it and you can slap the AOU's latest name on this bundle of DNA that has been spiraling through time, and you have this incredible opportunity to share the same space with it and get a little bit of a glimpse into its world. And then the best thing that you're supposed to do there is just come up with its name and bounce. But in that, in everything that is around us every day, the natural world is infinitely complex. And if you can slow down enough, slow down to the speed of wonder, you will be changed. You'll be transformed by what you encounter. I like to think of every phenomenon out there as sort of having a gravity well. Remember those in physics class, those depictions of the curvature of space-time with a sort of, let's say, a rubberized sheet with a bowling ball on it, and you can see that it pulls down, and if you roll the ping pong ball by it, then it deflects its path. But if you roll the ping pong ball slowly enough, it falls down into the orbit and then descends into the gravity well of that phenomenon. And that's how I like to think of my brain out there, that my brain is speeding along at the speed of efficiency. If I can slow myself down to the speed that I get caught in the gravity well of the mystery, of the wonder of this, I will come out changed, and I will have learned something from my own direct observations that I never knew before. And it's profoundly transformative, but you have to go slowly and give yourself permission to slow down.
I love that phrase, slow down to the speed of wonder. You used a phrase on, I think it's on your website, intentionally curious. I love that phrase because one of the things that I think is really difficult as an educator is, especially with children, not those who still are, sort of coded in curiosity, the 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old types, but those that are starting in the teens, and they're surrounded by so much sensory information, and and you hear this over and over again about how they become disconnected from nature, disconnected from the environment around them. How do we keep intentional curiosity there?
It takes work, and it takes some swimming upstream. Paying attention burns calories, and it's not the default position for our brains. We're, I think, most comfortable when we're sort of sitting back, relishing sort of the completeness of our understanding of the world, and like, yes, I've got this figured out. It's a comfortable place to be. And questions are disruptors, and our brains don't like that. And in standard schooling, questions are the things that the teacher asks as a form of a gotcha to see if you had read the textbook. So questions no longer become your friends. They no longer are a place for sort of bouncing off. It's something that you have to defend yourself against. And so I think that we train ourselves away from questions. Little kids come into to primary and elementary school filled with questions. They're little question marks running around in the field. Anybody who has worked with young kids knows this. And then you get a group of teens. And by that point, we're no longer question marks, we're periods. Because the reason I say intentional curiosity is that sometimes a question will come to you. Right? There'll be something that is such a low-hanging fruit mystery that you can't help but bonk your head into it as you pass. But there are these lower levels of questions where if you are open to them, then they will come out and dance with you. You can come out and play with all of these little mysteries, and little mysteries are everywhere. You have to get comfortable with the idea of, I don't know everything. When I was starting off as a naturalist, I thought that my role was I'd seen some interpreters who seemed to know everything about the natural world. You ask them about this spider, they're going to tell you about that spider. They're going to give you 5 facts about this spider. And then what about this? Well, let me tell you about this mushroom. Here's all this cool stuff about the mushroom. I wanted to be that naturalist who had all the answers. But the more that I've kind of gone along and kind of looked at the process of how do we figure stuff out and what do we know, I realized that nobody knows everything. And the really fun stuff is when you are kind of dancing on the edge of kind of connecting what your current knowledge is with these mysteries and then trying to figure stuff out yourself. So if you are intentionally curious, you are asking questions everywhere. And it takes practice. You have to build up to it. So start with like little things and see what you can build and build and build into. The most profound questions usually are not the first ones that come to you, because questions like to kind of hide. They're like nested dolls. And you have to ask some of the more some of the less nuanced questions first in order to get to the questions that are behind it. But with practice, we can all learn to do this, and we can retrain ourselves to be curious. So you don't just, your curiosity isn't a trait. It's a behavior that you can do. Like, let's go do some curiosity. And then when you get curious about something, your brain gives you dopamine. That kind of lean in feeling is a big slosh of dopamine in your brain. And then the whole world is more fun and more interesting. So let's go do some curiosity.
I love that. Let's go do some curiosity. Wait, part of my brain is saying, it's almost the antithesis of education. It's almost the antithesis of the scientific method.
It flips the script on the way that science is often being taught. Or at least when I was in school, the way that science was taught was that here is a bunch of stuff we figured out with the process of science. Now you memorize that and spit it back to me. So essentially that I would, become that naturalist who has all the answers, as opposed to become the person who sees strategies to figure stuff out. That's where, when we talk about the scientific method, the way that we teach the scientific method, I don't think is helpful, because it's not the method of scientists. It's the method of science teachers who've been told that this is the method of scientists. And I think it comes down to one paper in the 1940s where a person wrote letters to a bunch of scientists, collected a whole bunch of, here are things that scientists do. Tell me things that you do in the course of your daily practice. Then double checked this list with other people, and they all said, yes, those are science things. And then took a series of those things and put them together in a little story of, this is the way that you do science, and called it the scientific method. And textbook manufacturers have picked up on that. But it never was the method of science. And all of that research that that fellow did, this was before Karl Popper. Karl Popper is this philosopher of science who got us to think about the ideas of falsifiability. And that instead of going out there to try to prove that something is true, you go out and you try to find evidence against your favorite ideas. That process of trying to poke holes in your best explanations for things ends up being really useful, because sometimes you can poke holes in it and then you say, well, I poked holes in this explanation, so that explanation is off the table. If you can poke holes in one of your explanations, you can take it off the table. And that's really, really useful. Here was something that I thought this thing worked this way, and then I messed around with it enough to realize that that explanation doesn't really hold up. But then I've got some other explanation that I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to poke holes in it. And every way I try to poke holes in it, I can't do that. That ends up meaning that that explanation may be correct, but we'll never know. And so it ends up being this very humble way of looking at trying to figure out the nature of the universe. We will never know when we're right, if we're right. And so there's a truth that is out there somewhere, but slowly we can kind of circle closer and closer and closer to it, but never knowing when we're there, if we ever get there. And I think that framing of it is playful and inviting for us to kind of come out and let's go play with the world. Let's go explore and let's go try to figure stuff out. And I wonder if it's this. So when I start thinking about questions, I think of questions in three categories. I've got, let's see questions. And let's see questions are the ones that you can actually answer by your own direct observation. When do the sandhill cranes start showing up in their migration at this location? All you need is a calendar and an alarm clock to get you up early in the morning, and you get out there regularly and you can figure that out. Then there's this whole other second category of questions that are the could it be questions. And those are the ones those are the ones that where you can kind of circle towards the truth, but you'll never know when you're right on it. And the way you play with those things is, let's say they show up mid-March. You say, why do they show up in mid-March? Well, I can't directly observe why they show up in mid-March, but could it be it? So I say to myself, well, could it be? Could it be this or this or this? And you come up with calling it a could it be question invites you to make all sorts of what scientists would call alternate hypotheses. And the hypothesis is a potential possible explanation for what you're seeing. You can then start trying to poke holes in some of those explanations. And it's fun to do. And you can do this in an afternoon, and you're figuring stuff out. Then there's a third category of questions. So the first ones you can answer from your direct observations. The second category you can use inference to get closer to. And the third category, these are what I call the let it be questions. So you've got let's see, could it be, and let it be. And let it be questions are questions that you cannot answer by direct observation. And you can't answer them by inference, but they're still powerful, beautiful questions about the world. And this is where we bring in poetry and art and philosophy, and we can wonder about this stuff. But we're just kind of outside of the realm of science when we're doing that. So is it a let's see question? Is it a could it be question? Or a let it be question? Those names suggest your next step in how you can investigate that. So that is part of my training to try to be intentionally curious, is I will come up with a question and then I'll categorize it. Which one of these three is it? And I'll go like, oh, I'm wondering about how the poppy feels about the sunshine. That sounds like a let it be question. I think I'm going to write a haiku. So my next step gets suggested, like what do you do with your questions? You've got something that you can do with any question now.
In your experience, a few decades now of inviting others, especially educators, into this world, I mean, it's almost like a re-education. They've been taught to think about them in terms of teaching it, in terms of those right answers. The minute you go, let's see, could it be, let it be, that's a whole different education. It might be parallel to some of the things that they're doing, but it's a complete shift in thinking and approach. And you have to get them there first before they can get their students. We're going to take a quick break in my conversation with Jack. And when we come back, we're going to talk about those hurdles, those challenges that educators face, especially science educators, in shifting mindset. But before we get there, let's check in with Director of Communications at NAAEE, Stacy Pierpoint. Hi, Stacy.
Thanks, Jerry. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into The World We Want and this incredibly thoughtful conversation. Our podcast is all about shining a light on changemakers who are using environmental education to improve the world around us. At NAAEE, we're working with educators around the world, like Jack, to create a healthier and more sustainable future for all of us. You can learn more about our mission and how to connect with and support us on our website at naaee.org. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@naaee.org. If you feel inspired by what you've heard, share this episode with anyone who might enjoy these uplifting conversations. And also, if you could, take a minute to rate and review The World We Want. It really helps us out. Thanks for listening. And now back to Jerry and Jack in the studio.
Thanks, Stacy. And now back to my conversation with John Muir Laws. I'm curious about the hurdles that they face in their own re-education to be able to then turn around and share that. I don't think most science teachers in high school think about having their kids write haikus about poppies.
Probably not. But you have to have that category when you're thinking about questions. It's, before, when we kind of get to those sort of questions, you're like, that's just like not a science question, bad question. Now you can go like, oh, what a beautiful question. And you've got something that you can do with it. Fortunately, we have now the next generation science standards that a lot of states have adopted as a framework for teaching science. And I like to think of those as the next generation science standards as kind of a three-legged stool, where one leg of the stool is, here's all this crazy stuff we figured out using the process of science. And they call these the disciplinary core ideas. And there's, we figured out that the Earth is going around the sun. That's crazy. Then the next part is these science and engineering practices, which are, what are the things that we do that allows us to figure stuff out? And so instead of just take my word for it that we figured out that the Earth is going around the sun, it's saying, here's the evidence, and here's how people put these little pieces together and figured out that this was what was going on. And isn't that cool? So you're looking at in the past. So it's not, when you're learning about some factoid about something, it's not just an idea that is floating around the ether that says, memorize me because I'm right. But instead, it is a claim that is based in observation. Here are the observations that led up to this. So we can look at what that person in the past did. Now let's flip that and let's use that same approach in the present to try to figure out whatever problems we're looking at. So instead of teaching the scientific method, there are these science and engineering practices that are things that you can do to try to figure stuff out. And what are the habits of mind and the things that you can do to do science, which means teaching people how to think critically and draw relationships between the evidence for a claim and the strength of our support for that claim. I mean, that critical thinking idea, well, the world needs more of that. They need an awful lot more of that right now. This idea that I'm going to support some claim in proportion to the strength of the evidence for it. And if that landscape of evidence changes, I'm going to change my mind. And I get a new little piece of information, it's going to wiggle me. Does this make me more confident or less confident, as opposed to this sort of binary right-wrong thing? And that is profoundly useful. Then the final leg of the stool of the next generation science standards are what they call their cross-cutting concepts. And those are big ideas in science that I sort of think of them like a whale that kind of comes up and it's like, oh, look, structure and function. And then it goes back down. You sort of see this idea, and as you start looking around, you're going to see it repeated again and again and again in a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different fields. It helps you sort of see similarities and relationships between all of these conversations that we're having in all of these different fields. So I do believe we've got tools on the table for us to start teaching this stuff, especially when we look at the science and engineering practices. One of them is actually asking questions. It's that important that they picked it out. Like, let's ask questions. And the more we practice that, the better we get at it.
Does asking those questions, do we not encourage that because it also propels us into changing our mind? There's a certain paralysis that exists about not changing our mind, sticking to what the thing is, regardless of the changing landscape of information. We're going to stick to it.
I know what I know, and my loyalty to a claim or to an idea, it can become part of my identity. If I say, I believe that, you can fill in the blank with anything, but let's just use anthropogenic climate change is not real, right? That's something that I believe. The minute I kind of throw that down as my identity, I have lost my capacity to really evaluate things critically and to change my mind. So the moment I kind of wrap my head and my heart around any claim, my ability to change my mind and to think about it has really been hurt. Let's say a person has that position. They're in a much better place if they're, rather than saying it's not real, they say, if they can say, I don't find the evidence for it to be compelling. And what that does is then it brings us back to, let's all just look at the evidence And then we can have a conversation around that. So rather than wrap your identity around your loyalty to a claim, you want to wrap your identity around a flexible process of changing your mind in the presence of evidence. And if the evidence goes against something that you currently were sort of supporting, it's a total win for you to be able to change your mind. And if the evidence strengthens around something that you already thought, it's a total win for you. So either way things go, you don't lose. But the I believe this, oh yeah, I believe that sort of thinking about claims sets us up for kind of win-lose, as opposed to, I sort of think of, in Bayesian reasoning, there's this, your position of confidence in something is changing. It's sort of on a slider. You want to have your position on a slider and then think to yourself, what percent confident am I about this? And you can just kind of throw this out and you sort of start thinking about this. You say like, I am 90% confident about this claim, is different than saying this is truth. Then you get some new information. You kind of go like, wow, that's really interesting. I'm going to go for 85. Thinking probabilistically is a sort of another great tool in our toolkit of helping ourselves be willing to change our mind in the presence of evidence.
This is a tiny tact in what we're talking about right now, but it feels like the right place, and that is listening. Listening in two different ways. One is the obvious, is listening to one another, as I'm listening to you now. And in that way, we draw in other kinds of information in which we can have a sliding scale and think about things anew. You were doing an online workshop, and there was a question that came up. Are you truly hearing what the world is telling you? And it's listening's role in communication and relationships. And it really got me thinking a lot about our relationship with nature. And do we really listen? Going back to the bird watching versus watching birds analogy. Are we really listening? Are we just getting enough of the call that we can tick it off and move on? Or are we really listening to what it's saying to us and how we feel about it when it does speak to us? And then the question comes up, what happens when we don't listen? I'm not sure if it's a trait that we have in this culture, is to truly listen to one another, but also to listen to nature around us, to listen to the world around us, partially because we're bombarded maybe with so much audio information. But I thought it was an interesting topic for somebody who has built his whole career on journaling. The things you draw, the things you sketch and put down in a book, or this whole conversation that you were having was about listening, not drawing, but listening. But yet they seemed like two parallel roads that you almost have to have your left foot on one road and your right foot on the other road, walking at the same time if you're truly going to be aware of the world around you.
I think that's right. What's at the heart of both practices is paying attention. Listening is all about paying attention. If you are talking and I am coming up with my response to you while you're talking, I am not listening to what you're saying. I'm going, okay, yeah, I got that. Now I'm going to kind of come up with my response to it. If I have a bird in front of me and I just sort of label it and walk on, then I am not present with that bird. As people are talking, I want to first to understand what they are saying before I need to be understood. And so the active listening techniques, such as, I just want to make sure I'm really understanding what you're saying. Are you saying, you repeat back to them what you think is going on, and check to make sure that that really is what they are saying. That builds your relationship with that person. To be truly heard by another person, yes, that is what I was saying. That is such a beautiful bonding part of a conversation. That can help me even if I don't agree with what that person is saying. If we have the common ground of them really being heard, then I'm in a much better place to kind of articulate what is different about the way that I'm seeing it if I choose to go that direction. And so with nature, if I am out there and I am just sort of labeling things and I think I've basically kind of know what's going on here and I'm ready to bounce, I'm not able to sink into any moment and find levels of nuance that will change me.
When you go out to journal, and I don't know how often you go out to journal just on your own, but probably there's a certain solace in it. There's a certain love, I don't know a better word, caring for yourself to go out and spend time journaling. How do you get rid of the baggage that one carries? And and this applies to the listening as well, because one of the challenges I think when we truly listen to someone is eliminating the baggage. And go back to your journaling when you go out there. How do you leave behind the baggage that you're carrying around? We carry around so many elements of baggage. So to truly immerse ourselves in listening to another person without being forward into the next thing we have to do, or sitting down and sketching a leaf and being that plant.
Sitting down here with you and having this conversation is the most important thing that I can do right now. It's what I am doing. It's here I am. And if my head is spinning out in what I'm going to do once we end this call, I am going to miss fruits of being here with you. When I am with one of my children, if I am kind of checking things off, here's a perfunctory I love you, and then I'm kind of thinking about the next thing, I've missed an opportunity for connection. If I am out in the field and I'm looking at that California poppy, I am spinning around maybe on a drive there, I listen to the radio, and I'm getting all bunchy about something that I heard that made me angry or upset. Social media is a great place to be fed information that will make you angry and upset. People have discovered that keeping people in a state of anxiety and anger is a great way to improve engagement with those social media platforms. So there's a lot of people spinning you things that kind of make you feel bunchy. But if you go to hug your child with that in mind, if you go out to spend time with the poppy with that in mind, you are not present with whatever it is that you are doing. You mentioned love. I believe that love is the act of attention. Love is the act of sustained, compassionate attention. And paying attention to the world is one of the most valuable, important things that I can do with my short life. I turned 60 just the other day. I'm looking back, gosh, there's more behind me than there is in front of me. That's really interesting. What do I do with that time? Mary Oliver has a beautiful poem called The Summer Day, in which she looks at a grasshopper. And then at the end of this time she spent looking deeply, deeply at this grasshopper, she asks her audience, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And she's been looking at a grasshopper. But whatever it is that you do, go deeply into that. I find that when I am filled with the cares and concerns of the world, one thing that helps me recenter and be present and be able to kind of change my channel is to do some intentional breathing. So I will go out, I will close my car door. I've just gotten out. Before I go journaling, I'll just close my eyes and I will take some breaths and just be aware of the breath coming in and be aware of the breath coming out. And then when I feel ready, I open my eyes and I continue to feel my breath, and it recenters me. And then when I pick up my journal and I sit down beside the poppy and I start to draw and describe what I see, the journaling demands my attention. It says, look at this poppy. Now look again and look again. Oh, really? Does that come in there? What about that? Oh, really? No, it's actually over there. There's 2 of those. But no, wait, hold on. There's 4 of those parts. So I am looking again, I'm looking again, and I'm learning. And all of that goes down into the book. So the process of journaling forces me to pay this attention, which is one of the key things that gets us into a flow state. So you start doing this, and pretty soon all that noise turns off, and there's just you, and there's this poppy, and you miss your plane, and it's okay.
There's an educator out there who's listening to this podcast. I've been thinking about doing journaling with my kids, and I haven't done it yet because I didn't know how to do it. It sounds like to me you're saying there's a process there long before you ever pick up that pencil or pen. There's a process to recenter. There's a process to listen to yourself and to the world around you that we can't rush through long before we pick up that pencil or pen. And I wonder, going back to what Amy Tam wrote, she said, had I known that I was going to be doing this book, The Backyard Bird Chronicle, I would have spent more time being more careful with my drawings, because she includes her earliest sketches and drawings. And she said, but then would I have been as present if I'd been worrying about them being right or wrong? I'm thinking about that educator who's listening to this and saying, I need to make sure that I don't worry about being right or wrong. And I need to make sure that I impart that to my kids so that they realize that this isn't about a right or wrong. This is about centering, breathing, listening, and then immersing myself, falling in love with the thing that I have come to be.
That's right. To fall in love, what we need to do is to pay attention. And it's not about your journal. It is not about whether the page looks pretty or not. It's not that there's some specific way that you're supposed to be doing nature journaling. What I try to do is to lift as many barriers as I can between somebody making an observation and putting it on paper. And that's the secret to it. Like, if you see something, sketch something, or just write it in your journal. And if you like words better, if your journal can be mostly words. If you're a quantitative person, it can be lists and numbers. If you are a dyslexic like me who got shy of writing words, your journal can be mostly drawing pictures. But it's not about the journal. It's about the grasshopper. It's about the poppy. It's about paying attention to the world. The journal is a tool in service of paying attention to the world. I don't want to overcomplicate it. What are the ways that you should be journaling? What do I do first? Basically, if you observe something, put it down on paper. And then the next thing, and then the next thing. And try to shake up your mental etch-a-sketch a little bit by every once in a while doing things in ways that you feel a little bit uncomfortable with. So, for instance, if you, like me, most of my stuff, the note-taking method that comes easiest to me is to draw a picture of it. And then I say to myself, wow, there are a lot of observations that I'm making that are hard to do with a sketch. So why don't I write that down? Or maybe let's put a measurement in there. So instead of like the duck dove for a long time, I'm going to start counting seconds and say, it was about 40 seconds the first time, and it was about 50 seconds the second time. And isn't that interesting? That's a lot of time to be pedaling your little duck feet and holding your little duck breath. That's pretty impressive. So you go, Grebe. Just get stuff down in the notebook. We don't want to overthink it. If a journal page helps you pay attention to something that you would have bounced past and helped you kind of fall into its gravity well, that journal page is successful. If it helped you come up with a question that you otherwise wouldn't have asked, it's successful. If it serves as an anchor in your memory that I saw this and this and this and this, and you look back on it and you go like, oh, that's right, I did see this and this and this and this. And that helps you remember it more vividly and more accurately, because our memory is not a good system for recording history. It's useful if that happens. So make your journal useful instead of turning it into something that becomes scary. There's a way that you're supposed to do it, and see what happens. And I think that people will find that when the pressure of making the pretty journal is lifted, they journal a lot more and it's a lot more fun. And then what happens is your whole thinking process is out on a piece of paper in front of you, and you can see the questions that you're asking. You can see all the observations that you're making. You can notice that, gosh, here is a let it be question, and here's a let's see question. Gosh, I don't have time to do both of these. I think I'm going to write the haiku, or maybe I'm just going to wait and sort of time what is the time interval between those birds' songs, and then I'm going to answer my let's see question. It allows you at a metacognitive level to see yourself thinking and see yourself engaging with the world, and that lets more in. So it's not about the journal, it's about nature. It's about paying attention. It's about listening to the world, whether you're listening with your eyes, your ears, your heart. Put that down on your paper. Then when you look down on that, it will take you a place that you hadn't seen when you first sat down beside that poppy.
Going back to your illustration about sliding on that little scale, then it slides it to a new place.
If you've got some observations that challenge something that you previously thought, don't hide that. Don't go back and correct the thing previously in your journal. Celebrate that and say, like, I thought this, then I saw this, now I think that. Wow, isn't it neat that I'm able to change? So anytime you do get to change your mind in the presence of evidence on little things, celebrate that. And what it does is it gets us more used to changing our mind in the presence of evidence. And then perhaps we can do it on something more substantial. What is the last time that you changed your mind about something of real significance? And if it's been a long time, then one way to interpret that is that's because I was right. Another way to interpret that is that's because that way of thinking is comfortable for me. And I wonder what opportunities for changing my mind in the presence of evidence I have missed.
That reminds me of a line that I wrote down, and don't steal the opportunity to struggle. And I love that line because I think it applies to all of us at any age, but especially for younger people when we're trying to help them explore a new direction. And I'm thinking about educators here in trying to do like journaling, for example, and they may not be able to draw. Your point was really a wonderful one about then write it in words. Maybe you become a poet out of it. But I think that don't steal the opportunity to struggle is something that I kind of hear resonating from a lot of this conversation about is giving people the freedom to struggle and giving ourselves the freedom to struggle.
And if we could have changed the discussion from how do we make this good to how do we make this useful, then it opens up lots more possibilities for what you can do.
And useful to you.
Yes, that's right. So useful to you. By doing this, it helps you notice something that you otherwise would not have noticed.
Jack, before I let you go, this is called The World We Want, but so much of what you do and have done is building the world you want. I'm completely impressed with that dedication to doing something different than the world initially perceives as successful, but yet you are wonderfully successful at it. And in just the number of people that you've contacted and the lives you've changed, I love the concept of throwing a pebble into a pond and those ripples are the people we touch. But at some point, it's touching far distant shores beyond our horizon, those ripples. And I think you have done that. Instead of telling me what the world you want, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the two things that you have created that I think are the world you want. One is the NJEF, is the acronym, I guess it goes by, the Nature Journaling Education Forum. And the other is Wild Wonder Foundation. Those are significant steps in you building the world you want.
The Nature Journal Educators Forum is a weekly online discussion group that I started back when the pandemic broke out. Went online and started teaching classes online. And that was a place where Nature Journal educators could come together and we could talk about different ideas. And we could share ideas. I tried this, it worked. I tried this, I'm really struggling with that. What do you do like when, you've given everybody all these prompts and set them out there, and then 5 minutes later that one kid just sort of stands up, okay, I'm done, and then starts going around and throwing rocks or bothering the other kid who still is kind of working at it, and then they're done, and then the whole thing kind of falls apart. Like, that happened to me. How do you handle that? And so it was useful for sharing those ideas. But for me, it's also become a place where we can regularly have conversations and to think about who do I want to be as an educator, why am I doing this? It's become a place where we can ask a lot of these questions, and it's attracted a critical mass of really interesting, thoughtful people. So we have conversations about listening, and we actually listen to each other. We problem solve, and it's beautiful. One of the things that I think that I want more of in my life is community. And through that, it's weird that originally I was thinking like with a virtual thing, how can you build community? But I've generally grown deep affection and respect for all of these different people and their ways of thinking about things and what they bring to the table. It's been absolutely beautiful. The Wild Wonder Foundation is also all about building community around this process of nature journaling to help us fall in love with this planet to the point that we care enough to become stewards to protect it. How can you give people resources to be able to do that? If I were to get up and talk about environmental problems that distress me, I think that people would tune that out. But if we get up there and we say, hey, look at this beetle. Isn't this cool? Look at the shape of this antenna. This is just nuts. And then we start geeking out on things and paying attention to the world. And we're doing that together. And it's like, come along with me. Let's go play with this. It's fun. It builds community because fundamentally we're paying attention. Fundamentally, we are falling in love with the world. So teaching people how to nature journal is teaching people how to fall in love with their life, with their world. That's what motivates us to protect it. So I do feel really good about both of those experiences, but I also want to try to keep them as things that it's about the bigger ideas. It's about the beetle and protecting the beetle. It's about the community and the conversations rather than have it be a product or a promotion. And I love the way that those things have come together. I'm going to pitch this to you now. If you're interested in like, gosh, I would like to nature journal. Hey, folks, you absolutely can. it's a lot easier and it's a lot more fun than you're thinking. There's no special hoops you have to jump through. You've got everything you need right now to be doing this and to be really getting a lot out of it. And the more that you do it, the more you're going to learn all these other tricks and things. So for instance, maybe you don't start off with artistic skills and you're primarily a writer. That's great. Well, you keep doing it. And what happens is you realize that all of these things that you thought were like somehow kind of this magical gift that other people had, you develop those skills as well, and you can absolutely do these things. And we're doing it together, and the people doing it are really, really fun. And then we're also working together to make a positive difference. One of the things I want to do with my wild and precious life is I want to spend a bunch of time looking at that beetle, to look at the grasshopper with Mary Oliver. And I also want to step up and together with strong voices in a community to protect these things that we love. And that's what we're about.
Jack, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And truly, thanks for being a carpenter in building the world we want. And I feel like you're out there really have your hands dirty and are doing it. So I appreciate that.
It's a beautiful experience. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you, and thank you for what you do to share voices like this that are where we're making a difference together, and that allows us to connect with each other and to weave a really beautiful cloth. So thank you for what you do with your loom of words.
I want to thank Jack for sharing his vision with us and for reminding us that drawing is not about making pictures. It's about how we learn to see. You can find more about Jack and his nature journaling, workshops, and books through links on our website at naaee.org/podcast. As you've just heard, environmental education is as multifaceted as the diversity of guests we have on our podcast. To explore more, subscribe to the World We Want podcast on our website or wherever you listen to your favorite stream. We'd love to hear from you and know what resonates. If there's an aspect of environmental education you want to know more about, let us know. We can follow up maybe with a future podcast. Write us at podcast@naaee.org. This has been The World We Want, a co-production of the North American Association for Environmental Education in partnership with nonprofit Globio, with generous funding support through the EE360 Plus program. A special thanks to our entire podcast team, Judy Browse, Stacy Pierpoint, Jimena Cuenca, and Globio's Pippa Cavill. And thank you for being part of the world we want. We hope our conversations inspire you to take action in your own world every day to ensure we build a world we all want. I'm Jerry Ellis. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing the world we want, the NAAEE podcast.